And to move the
Please
card.
put this on the mantle.
Put that on the, I will put that on the mantle.
Or you can start, just put it on the mantle.
I will put it on the mantle.
Did you tell Lionel?
I told him if he knows it, not to say a word. Okay? Same goes for David Steinberg. If you hear something and we say we're going to save the explanation till later, David, till later. Thank you. Okay, our two problems are right next to each other. Okay. So we're going to start the actual, but I like them both. It's okay. Yeah? What? What are you pointing at? Yes.
Me.
You're not a problem.
Yes.
Okay.
If the phone rings, excuse me, but I will
Absolutely.
get the phone, I go into the other
Certainly,
room, okay?
certainly. We all have, things that have to happen. So before we even start, oh, well, he can come in. Lionel, you want to let him in?
I see you've got it from the Epic of Gilgamesh
Okay, David. No. Okay, before we do anything else, I really want to thank Rosalie and Lawrence for offering us their home so that we can disturb, their sense of well-being for a little bit. And I want to introduce my colleagues here. So I'm going to start with Bill Rowett, who I've known for 30 years. Bill is a retired jazz, blues, and rhythm and blues and classical trumpet player. We know each other because I grabbed him to write the curriculum for Akiva High School for a Jewish band program, accredited program using provincial accreditation. And we studied together for a year, and then he wrote a program that the ministry approved like that. And he taught it to an adoring bunch of students with massively different instrumental levels and brought them to the point of public performance, and it was wonderful. They adored him, he adored them, it was a happy time, and we've known each other for ages. My newest colleague over here, I don't know if you know that this isn't just Joan, this is Dr. Joan. Did you know that, all of you? Dr. Joan from Yale with her PhD, who is such a joy to work with and such a joy to know, and brings so much beauty into the universe. It's extraordinary. So it is a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to work with both of you. Bill's the nearest thing I have to a brother. Okay, Dan, you're in? All right. So we can start. This is being recorded on audio for Stephen Samuels in France, a friend of mine, and for Josh Anzarut in Bethesda, Maryland. You may recall Josh is my favorite troublemaker and instigates many good conversations and many excellent, from his perspective, divrei yamim. And this is his fault, this entire thing. Because one day I sent him a video of an Israeli musician, and he came back at me with, "It sounds Arabic. Isn't there anything that is authentically ours? I wish I could find it." Which sent me down a rabbit hole, and I grabbed Bill to come with me. And then we took Joan. So this is the result of the first part of all of the research we've done. And we call it the Semitic sound basin. So I'd like to start with Joan. And there's a reason why we're not telling you what she's playing.
What's she gonna play?
I'm not telling you. Okay.
The penis theme song.
If you know that, I want you to keep it to yourself till the end, okay? And I'm sure some of you
But
do.
here, I'm curious, who thinks that they do know
Who does
that?
think they know what this is?
Oh.
Even better, no one. Super. All right. Now I'm gonna ask my daughter to give us the first slide. I'm going to ask you, what does what Joan played and what you're about to hear have in common? We won't listen to the entirety of this yet. Go ahead, Sheva. We're going to cut it here. Can you tell what they have in common yet? No? Good.
I made out the word Shema.
Well, that is one thing. That is, okay, so that
It's Akkadian.
is exactly.
That's what panpipes.
Those are panpipes, and Bill is going to explain how circular breathing works at another time. So that is Akkadian. The music, or the ability to play this music, comes from a tablet that is dated 1650 BCE that was found in the archaeological dig that was done in Akkad, the first Semitic city-state in the Middle East. So the language you are hearing is probably a forerunner of Hebrew. So if you recognize Shema, hear, listen, you automatically know this is family. One of the things that these two pieces of dissimilar music have in common, but I don't find them dissimilar, by the way, what they have in common is that they originate in an area that we've dubbed the Semitic Sound Basin. Now, what's the Semitic Sound Basin? It's partially the Fertile Crescent, and we know what that is, but it's actually so much more, because it reaches east to Iran in the days when it was Persia. It reaches south to Saudi Arabia and what are now the Gulf states, where Yemen is. And it reaches north all the way to an area called Ras Shamra today in Syria, but was once called Ugarit. These sounds originate from the same place. That's the Semitic Sound Basin. And one of the things we want to demonstrate to you today is that that is where our music comes from. And that is where so much of it is returning to today among Israeli musicians and jazz players, and that belongs to us. So, if you want to hear the rest of this, we can play it. Otherwise, we can move on. One of the reasons that it is so difficult to establish the history of Jewish music in the ancient period is that nothing got written down. How do we know that this is accurate, the stringed instrument? And why do we know that a stringed instrument belongs in this era and very little else? So I'm going to turn it over to Joan about why a stringed instrument. And then I'm going to tell you how we know what the notes are on that instrument. And then I'm going to go to Bill.
Well, there were other instruments that we used to refer to as primitive instruments that were wind instruments, but why it's very appropriate to play on string instruments now is because unlike that thing,
As she points to a piano.
we don't have set pitches. We can move around. We can, and we don't have a set scale, except in Western music we do. But it's like it reminds me of the erhu, the two-string Chinese instrument, where and we know that they would take boards and and dry them out and use sheep cut.
Mhm.
Which is what this is.
That, by the way, is Joan's Baroque cello. It's older probably than most of us put together. Its tone is absolutely stunning.
It was
So-
fixed, but now it's Baroque, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Someone had to say
Yeah,
it.
my husband. Okay,
Where,
All right.
where was it made? What country was it made?
Joan?
Well, this is a very, okay.
Should we put this off till a little later?
We can
Okay.
talk about that.
We can talk
Because
about it a
you're
little
Italian.
later. Okay. How do we know?
It's Italian.
Thank you. Okay. So how do we know where people should put their fingers? We have no musical notation, written musical notation, or carved musical notation in cuneiform to refer back to. But what we do have from Akkad, carved into the tablets, are pictures of where you put your fingers on the strings and how many strings. So, as Joan said, it's variable. We can make almost any sound. And really, it doesn't matter where we start, as long as we follow through. Yeah? Okay. So, that's one problem solved. This gentleman has rebuilt. Part of what he loves to do is find representations and rebuild the instrumentation. So, I'm going to ask Bill to explain why archaeology is critical in rebuilding or reclaiming this music. What did we find?
Well, to cut to the chase, the only valid evidence we have is found through archaeological digs. The only proof of the music that we have ultimately is archaeological. That's the only place. There is no evidence of what it sounded like. There is no evidence as to even the scales. Now that's controversial, but
We'll get back to it.
we'll get to that. But the thing is that well, I don't want to go into the characteristics of the music. I think I've lost track. Now, what do you?
I'm asking you, what did we find in the archaeological record that allows us to reconstruct the music? What visual representations can we find?
Oh, well, that's a lot of. There's a lot of digging being done.
Yeah, what they dig up
Well, they've dug up tablets
that show us.
that show instrument and in procession, orchestras in procession, and the pictures of the musicians holding the instruments. We've actually identified that the main instruments of the temple orchestra, there weren't that many. There's one instrument, I'm not sure what it is. It's called the halil.
That's a recorder.
Recorder? Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry. Anyways, there's a nibel, a kinnor, the hallel, and a cymbal. Just one cymbal. And there was, the size of the chorus varied.
We're not there yet.
I know, but the thing is, that's just the orchestra.
That's just the orchestra. So, but it's not our temple orchestra that we find. These are representations from other temples, other peoples, all from the Semitic Sound Basin area. Okay? So they correspond quite directly to the musical instruments that are mentioned in the Tanakh. Every single one of them. Even this double flute may have something to do with an instrument called a sackbut. Can you tell them what a sackbut is?
Sackbut.
Yeah.
Sackbut's an ancient trombone.
Oh, well, everything's a trombone to you.
No, that's
no.
what it is. A sackbut is the older trombone. It's the ancient instrument.
Okay, then it doesn't correspond to that. It corresponds to a modern bagpipe. We see things, what I'm thinking of.
Oh,
We
yes.
see, right? So we see bagpipes work the same way as the double flute. Do you want to explain circular breathing?
Well, that's where you take in air into your lung, and at the same time you emit air. You're taking it in. The circular part of it is that you're taking air into your lungs and expelling at the same time. It takes practice. Like I tried doing it. I could sort of do it a little bit, but it's really the province of the flute player, because the flute had the easiest time with, I don't know why, I'm not a flute player, but it seems that flute players you'll notice it's really part of their bag of tricks. the
They have
circular.
capacity. But what you saw, the double flute there, that's sometimes referred to as a panpipe, that double flute would have required the circular breathing in order to keep the drone sound of one pipe
Yeah.
continuous, and the other pipe to play the melody.
Melody.
Can I ask Bill to speculate, would the embouchure be the same for the double flute, the double pipes as a trombone when you?
They actually had they had a sort of a trombone mouthpiece for the old sackbut. They had a form of mouthpiece, sort of a tulip shaped sort of thing. They had developed it, and the flute was what you see today pretty much. It's just crossing the air over a hole to produce a sound, you know. But they're different mouthpieces altogether. You know, the flute uses an entirely different setup from a sackbut or anything like that.
So when we use the term ancient, you notice we're not going to use the term primitive anymore. Because there's nothing primitive about music.
Oh God, no, not about that world.
But that's
Never.
what they were taught.
That's what we were taught. Well, the other thing we were taught is that if you can't write it down, it's not really music. One of the things that's very important to understand about this is how much work people like Mr. Pringle put in, not only to rebuilding this instrument that he's playing, to correspond to what was found on stele in Akkad, but also to working out the melody and to working out, that's him playing the double flute, by the way, working out the drone and the melody on the double flute. So how do we get from this to a bunch of other things? Let's take one more step backwards. So I need the next one. The next piece comes from Ugarit. Okay, just go to the next one. That's okay. You're still my son-in-law. I still love you. Don't start. Don't start. Don't start. Okay? The find at Ugarit was absolutely critical. It is a religious piece of music, a hymn to a goddess. Now, when you study comparative religion, you generally avoid music because you have no concrete evidence of anything except the thinking of sociologists of religion who will tell you, and music, who will tell you that music generally in association with religion has 4 reasons to be heard or played. The first, celebration. Okay, you're bringing in the crops, you're bringing in the harvest, no one's going to starve, hooray, let's eat. That sounds like us, doesn't it? Okay, the second, consolation. The loss of a loved one, death. The end of a cycle, the cyclical death of a god or goddess. The third one, inspiration. Creating a movable, making your workforce move a little more quickly, such as the corvée when the temple was built. That was forced labor. You want them to work faster, you play instruments, okay? The fourth one is one we rarely find in this region. We do find it if we were to move to Greece, and it's called catharsis, okay? How many of you have ever gone to a really good rock concert? Like stunning. You got up, you danced, and you went home exhausted and happy. Lots of them, right? Okay. Also, these days, people go to raves for the same reason.
Well,
Catharsis-
traditionally, like music was used by the military, like they march into battle, like
They've-
the bagpipers,
Yeah,
Scottish,
absolutely.
Highland,
So as
regiments
to
with the-
inspire movement, yeah. Okay, but catharsis is the dumping of intense emotion. It drains you of intense emotion. So other than catharsis, we find these 3 reasons for music throughout the Semitic Sound Basin, throughout the Middle East. What we have here is a hymn to a goddess, which is celebratory. So let's go. Where's our arrow? Lawrence.
Click.
Oh.
Nope. Back.
That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one.
Back.
It doesn't look like it's a video.
It is a video.
It's not, that's just an image.
That's just an image.
Yeah, but the video plays. We had this problem. Lauren. We had this problem initially. All right, we'll just move on to the next thing. The next thing is the question of how music is transmitted in a non-literate society, or a society that doesn't have access to a written format. And the reason we look at that is because there has to be continuity if you want your music to survive, your sound to survive. And in the case of the music that is integral to us, we need continuity, otherwise we disappear. We are the only peoples in the Middle East who have survived what we have survived over millennia. And what this woman is doing, we're going to start in a minute. I see there's no arrow there either.
No, we've got this one.
You got this one? I hope so. What she's doing is one of the ways we survived. And I'm not going to explain too much about this except to tell you it is called chiromancy. Go.
Click A.
Click. Nope.
Is it chiromancy or chiromany?
Chiromancy.
I would have thought.
It's not. It's chiromancy. That's not it. Where's Lauren?
Can you go back to the thumbnail?
Go back to the, go back to the thumbnail, please. There. It just, no, go back
The other side of the arrow, right, in the center.
in the center,
Keep going. There you go.
and that's
Yeah.
it. Go.
Click A.
This is why technology is sometimes so difficult to live with. There we go.
Oh,
Keep
sorry.
going.
Sorry.
Mm.
So,
Oh, shit, that's left hand, all right.
so stop for a minute. If we stop and I ask you to repeat her movements one at a time, you might find it hard. Does anyone know what the chiromancy is for?
I don't know the word
Chiromancy. I knew it. Chiromancy is unlike orchestra, what an orchestra leader does. What's his hand signals for?
Rhythm
Rhythm
and expression.
and expression.
Well, it makes
But
something
this
go
is
harder.
not for that. Each of these hand movements represents a different group of teamim.
That's right.
So let's remember that for a little bit later. Do you want to try doing it?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. Try it from the beginning.
Stick along.
She learned to do her.
I learned it, that's how I
That's how you
learned.
did your
That's how I
haftarah.
learned it.
Okay, let's look at it again. Let's look at it again.
Yeah, do it again.
Mercha, Timcha, Muna, Enacha. Okay, so we can stop.
Man, you do that a dozen times.
I'm going to explain. Each of those movements represents a series of teamim, notes.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
it's not
right.
true.
Right. This, and they are developed in an era where you don't have recording devices. Not everyone knows how to write. Not everyone knows how to read. There's no internet, but we have to hang on to this for a reason. This is the backbone of our these symbols are the backbone of our continuation as a people. Very important
So
stuff.
what date would this be that people would be using this?
Well, we think this goes back to the existence of the temple.
Yeah.
I've
Wait.
seen
I was
people,
told, that there'd be people who would make those hand signals
Mhm.
to guide the reader,
singers.
the person who
Mhm.
was
Yeah, they would,
chanting,
yeah.
as they were reading from the scroll.
And to guide the Levitical choir that sang. And-
I've seen people do that.
So that,
Show me map up in a Torah service,
that's right.
reading the,
That's right. And there are variable, let's say variable tones and notes depending upon where you're seeing it, right? So her chiromantic gestures are going to be consistent with present day pronunciation in a North American synagogue.
Can I make a comment? No,
Yeah, but don't give anything away, Lionel.
no, but I mean, these hand signals actually they're mentioned in the Talmud.
They are,
And,
indeed.
but it's, according to the Talmud, it says you should only use your right hand for reasons I won't go into.
For sanitary reasons.
Yeah. but Rashi says that he is familiar with it, but it was done by people who emigrated from Israel to France.
Stop. It's not just there, okay? Okay, this is where I stop you. How do we get from that? We need the next one, which is the Yemenite trope, to what we're about to listen to here. Go. I think we're going to have, can you fast forward on this a little? Is that possible?
This is a basic introduction to the Iranian system, which had its own system and used in the Tavrani, the Tiberian system. There's all sorts of marks, but according to the Tamani tune, not every mark has its own tune. The system is actually, compared to the, let's say, Ashkenazi system, in a sense it's more simple. There's less differentiations between the marks. Once one has the basic pronunciation of the words, the system of the tune, the ta'mim, is relatively straightforward to learn. So I'm not going to use the different terms that the Tamanim themselves use. I'm just going to go straight into it from the beginning of Bereshit.
Okay.
And try to give a feel for the basic, the workings of the system, how it goes. So, you find that one of the main things is that you find the Ma'amid holds the word. I'll show you what I mean. The second pasuk is Waha'aras. And you see a Revia, it looks like a little diamond above the Aleph. And that means that word is Ma'amid, meaning that in the tune you hold the word. Instead of reading through it, you hold it like this. Waha'aras. And going on. Wavohu also has it's two dots, zakef katon, on the veb, and that's also ma'amin. So you read Waha'aras, under tahom, there's a ethnach, which looks like a kind of horseshoe, which is also a ma'amid, but it's a ma'amid that has a different sound to it. It goes down rather than up. I'll read it again. Waha'aras, وخاشخ على البنيثهم وخاشخ على البنيثهم. One more time. وخاشخ على البنيثهم وروح إلهيم مرحافة على البني همويم. The last major time of the pasuk, it's a ma'amid, but it changes the sound somewhat. If it's the last major time of the pasuk, if you noticed how I read it, it didn't sound like the other ma'amidim. So I'm going to start from the beginning. In the first pasuk, Bereshit, there's actually only one major tam under the He of Elohim. And so there you wouldn't read it like a normal ma'amid, a normal one that holds the word, but you would read it as the one that's at the end. Bereshit boro Elohim.
Okay, we can stop there. We can stop there. Now, a couple of things to notice. He doesn't say va, he says wa, because he lives in an Arabic language environment, but it's entirely possible that in its earliest form that the vav was pronounced wah, just like ayin had an actual sound at the back of the throat, which is called a glottal stop for ra'im, which is again similar to Arabic. Now, one of the reasons the Yemenite trope is so important to us is that it's going to resemble something much older. And one of the reasons it may do that is that Yemen was so much more isolated than many other parts of the Jewish world. So let's go just to the Turkish trope, and then I turn over to Bill and Joel for quite some time. Isaac Al-Ghazi Effendi was a Turkish cantor, and I would like you to listen to trope from his voice. You're going to find this very different, but yet it's all the same thing, and they're all the same notes. They are just decorated differently and maybe moved a little differently. Let's go. So we also get that. One breath. Okay. Now those sounded very different, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to make life even more complicated. I'm going to turn it over to Joan and Bill. So Joan is going to start with the oldest cantillation trope that Idelson found, and then Bill, when they finish, Bill's going to introduce you to someone whose last name is Idelson. Okay?
So just to preface this, again, this instrument is considered modern, even though it's 18th century. But we have been trained in the Western canon with scales of major minor, so we can look in the books and have somebody write down what they think something would sound like, but there's no way we can reproduce the same way voice can. For instance, I don't think it's possible to do that.
Maybe he was an alien.
But anyway, you're fine. So you want, which one we're doing?
You're starting with Babylonian,
Babylonian, okay,
which is almost like another very old one.
yes. Okay.
That's Babylonian. Now, while we go through, by the way, I want you to keep the dates 586 and 70 CE somewhere tucked in your consciousness. Next is you.
Syrian?
Syrian.
Syrian, yeah, I was going to do the Syrian.
Go ahead.
Okay, can I make a little preface about playing this music on the piano?
We want you to.
Okay, the piano doesn't do it justice, okay? It doesn't. Because the piano can't play double sharps, it can't play quarter tones, because this music, part of its identity is in the quarter tones, in the microtones. I know nobody talks much about it, but there's microtones in there and the piano can't do it. So what you're going to hear is just the main notes, the main line, okay? And it's, I don't know, I wish I played guitar, you know, because you could bend the note, you know. Anyways, here we go. Sorry.
And by the way, all of this is Torah trope. Variations on Torah trope, strictly.
There's ornamentations that I can't play.
No, because
They're
it's...
too subtle.
Yeah.
But the range of notes is greater. It goes, which is interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes up to a D here. A climax is on a D here. There's an F sharp in the key signature, so I'm observing it. It sounds major.
That's okay, if you wanna
No,
be
it does-
musically observant, we're tolerant.
I just wish I wasn't doing the piano. Actually, I could do it, if I played the trumpet, you could express it a little better. You could, you listen to the male voice saying, yeah, everything's a copy of the voice, right? Everything. That's what all the instrumentalists are trying to do, is basically reproduce the voice.
Let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
Joan,
So, did you wanna,
I'd like to tell them what it is.
did you wanna add the Persian one?
I do wanna
Okay.
add the Persian one,
All right, so-
absolutely.
This is the Persian one, which is very similar to Babylonian.
For a good reason.
Neighbors.
I like that one too. One of the reasons they're so similar is one of the reasons I'm telling you to keep your mind on the year 586 BCE. Definitely. Because it was in the year 586 BCE that the temple was destroyed. And of course, it wasn't until Cyrus the Great, the first emperor who truly understood the value of multiculturalism, and the United States is still working on that, who understood the absolute value of respect for the cultures and traditions of conquered peoples, as he thought his gods told him to. It wasn't until he allowed us to return to Judea, and not very few of us did, by the way, that we actually started building the second temple. But in Bavel and in Persia, which was such an unusual society at the time, we still retained the knowledge of what our trope was supposed to sound like. Once again, we can go back to those chiromantic signs, and we can assume that that is what the leader of the Levitical choir used in order to transmit the sound he wanted from his makelah. Keep going. That's you, Bill.
Oh,
You're the next one.
okay, which one are we gonna do? Sephardic?
Mm-hmm.
Which, Egypt or France?
Oh yeah, by the way, there are a lot of different Sephardi variations, just as there are 2 Syrian variations. And if you don't know, if you're from Aleppo, you are also vocalizing one of the oldest cantillation tropes in existence, because Aleppo is one of our oldest exiled communities. If you are from Damascus, the majority of Syrian Jews who live in Brooklyn are, I think you said Aleppo?
Yeah.
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 Aleppo. So I have to check that with Josh. Watch him be Damascus.
All right,
Go.
just which of the Sephardic would you like to hear right now? The
Give them a choice.
Oh, well, I got a French Sephardic or Egyptian Sephardic. I can play both of them. Egyptian, okay, I'll do the Egyptian. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry I can't do what a stringed instrument can do. It's so stiff with semitones,
Don't worry.
Anyways, I've got a key signature here that I can't observe. That's the irony. I'm giving you a skeleton version.
And we're scratching the
it's
surface,
like
so it's okay.
Okay, here we go. Okay, now. Oh, sorry. I blew it. I can't do it, sorry. I didn't play, I can't interpret the key signature that he has here. And there was no guide as to what to do with the note. There was just marks in the where the
That's
key
the one.
signature is.
That's the one, yeah.
But this is the one that has the most,
The most notes,
character.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The Egyptian one.
Yeah.
The French
We
is.
fought over who was gonna do that.
Yeah, I didn't play it very well.
It's okay. It's fine. It sounded fine because it is difficult, and this demonstrates one of the problems associated with transferring a music.
There's no rhythm. There's no written rhythm. It's based on text. The rhythm is the text rhythm, and if you don't know the text. But anyways, that's the point. Anyways.
Okay.
There's also Sephardic from Amsterdam, which
That was an interesting one,
I
yeah.
found really, really interesting.
So let's go. So play it.
So that one.
It's different, and it is very complex, and you may notice a difference when it is plucked to when it is bowed. So.
That sounded almost like a drum.
Hmm.
You know, like that.
Okay.
Do that too.
Last one. Is this the last one, or is
the
the next?
Ashkenazi one?
Okay. Is that Bill or you?
That's me.
That's you. That's her. Okay. Where you go?
And this one, well, sounds the most modern.
Why don't you tell us? So all of this material is the work of someone named Idelson.
Oh, you're talking about Jacob or Edelson?
Yeah, I want you to tell them why Edelson is so important in this.
Well, I mean, the history of it is that wasn't he a professor at the Hebrew Union College? That was his post?
Yeah.
Yep.
He had a post in New York, I believe. And in early 30s, in the Dirty Depression, he published a book that was still, like, scholarly, still wonderful. I used it. We were looking at a lot of different books about Jewish music, and it seemed all the new books validated Edelson's research that was done in the 20s and early 30s.
And they quote him.
And what surprises me is that it's almost, I really believe that every Jew, it would be to their advantage. Oh boy, I wish I could say it differently. I think you would gain greatly from getting your own copy of its historical development. Jewish music and its historical. I'm sorry I'm promoting the book.
No, it's a wonderful
book. It's a handbook that is very authoritative. You can pretty much bank on what's in there. It's well researched. He has references. He has lots of copious footnotes, and he condenses information really well. But there's so much research to be done that this new scholarship has got to happen. We've got to find out more. But as a book, it's a great basis. It's a wonderful textbook. That's what I used basically when I was teaching music to the kids, was the Eagleson textbook for my structure, you know. And it was great. Sorry for talking about the book so much.
No, I wanted
It's
you
also
to.
got like musical notation.
Well, we can
not
show you.
just, you know.
May I show? May I?
I don't, oh, you
I'll
want this?
just, yeah, I'll just show them. What he has, I don't want to drag. What he has.
Here, this is easier to see.
Oh, okay. What he has is the comparison. Can I pass this around?
Sure, you can just pass the
Okay.
sheet around.
What you can see here is the same. Rebecca, can you pass it that way? Thank you. Is the same pieces of, let's see, music language, please. The same
It's the notation, he used modern notation so that we can read it.
for every single one of these tropes, so that it can be played. So Edelson is kind of the equivalent of the gospel of Jewish music.
I
You know what
recently
I'm-
watched a video which has a talk by his great grandson.
Oh.
Talks about it.
You might want to send that to me,
Yeah,
and I can share it.
The key signatures, are
So
on.
take a moment.
And according to one thing I saw, he's also responsible for Hava Nagila. The melody from some old Hasidic songs. And he's the one who like added the words.
Yes. And the thing about Edelson is, unfortunate for Edelson, he died before the war. He never saw what happened to our European community, especially in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans. So that work was left to a woman named Flori Jagodi.
Yeah.
Right? And the bulk of the ethnomusicology associated with the Balkan region was done by Flori Jagoda. Flori Jagoda, and that music is available by CD, and her work is also available. Between Edelson and Jagoda, we have retained that information. Can you go to this? Okay, you see that? That. Up, that one. Yep. Okay, what you have here, and I'm going to remind you again, 586 and 70 CE. What we have here, can you see?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking him. Can you see? Okay, so here, can I turn this a bit?
I don't think we should do that.
Okay, now can you see?
Better for people to come in these empty seats.
Yeah, but those are more comfortable. I mean, I understand that.
They're stuck now.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, if you take a look at this, I'm going to take my glasses off for a second. There we go. If you take a look at this, we have Israel in the center, okay? And then we have all of these connecting circles. So out from Israel, we're going back to 586 and 70 CE. We have the movement, not just of our people, but what it was we took into the various lands of our exile. And one of the things that Edelson lets us know about is that there isn't just one Sephardi form of music. There are multiple forms of Sephardi music. And actually, this lists a couple of intersecting circles, because then we have Mizrahi. And it is Mizrahi music that is the Persian trope, the Babylonian trope, the Syrian trope, and the Yemenite trope. Those are our oldest sustained musical traditions. These are the ones that come from our home base. Okay? The latest ones are here, Ashkenazi. You'll see that Turkey also intersects between Ashkenazi and Mizrahi. I'm not certain why it does. And you'll see that Sephardi has Spain, but Greece is also part of the Sephardi tradition. North Africa, Morocco is the Sephardi tradition, and Morocco is separate from Tunisia and Algeria. These are probably the foundation, the numerical, think of just the foundations for the kinds of trope that spread out after 70 CE. The first one is probably Italy. Does anyone want to hazard a guess as to why it would have been Italy? The first European trope. That would have been a little different.
Exiles from Spain.
Italy?
Exiles from Israel.
70 CE, yeah.
They were taken to Rome.
They were taken to Rome enslaved, but within one generation, they were allowed to exist as freedmen under obligations to their previous owners. The Italian Jewish community is the oldest European Jewish community. And it's from Italy, when we went with the Roman army wherever they settled, that you find our earliest settlements in Western Europe, all the way to England, which was, of course, a disaster for everyone, especially Boydica. Okay, so when we look at this, we see the complex of sounds, all that are different, and yet they all originate in the same place.
I have a question.
Yes,
Just wondering, is any evidence of the Mountain Jews or the Central Asians?
the Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Afghanistan.
Kazakhstan, all the stands.
Yeah, yeah, they are probably their own, or were their own.
They'd be
Culture.
they would be an outlier
The most
of
out,
Persian.
they were an out,
They
absolutely.
They're part of the Persian cultural area.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the last remaining Jew were in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
He's
but
gone.
the Tats and the Mountain Jews and this.
Yeah.
In the
They,
Caucasus.
yeah, the Caucasus, Yagode got the northern part of the Caucasus range, but the southern part is more or less vanished, which is one of the reasons why we want to hang on to this.
Yeah, I know. I read somewhere, I forget where, which group, culture, Jewish subculture moved to India. Apparently there was a specific
Oh,
subculture.
India is such an issue, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
We had a whole program on that a couple of months ago.
So why don't you
Wow.
enlighten
I
Bill?
don't
I should have
remember,
heard.
but I can share that if people want to see it. We have
Okay.
a video of the whole story of the.
So send it to me and I will send it to Bill.
Oh,
Okay, however,
Cool.
there is a population that claims to have existed there since the time of the Assyrian expulsion, I believe, of the northern kingdoms of Israel. It is hard to verify.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
I think I read that. Yeah, what you
Okay.
just said. Yes.
What makes things very interesting in terms of the retention of this is that whereas Yemenite Jews and Syrian Jews weren't forced to give up not just their musical traditions, but also their religious traditions, the Beta Yisrael were. You know who I'm speaking of when I say Beta Yisrael, right? Ethiopian Jews. Not only were they forced to give that up, but they were forced to convert, primarily through the Ashkenazi rabbinate in Israel. So, we lose. Now, one of the things we learned from the Ethiopian community is that things were transmitted orally. We know this because I had the fortune of having a student named Moshe Miniwab in one of my classes at Yitzhak Rabin High School. And Moshe, who was so offended by the fact that his people and the history of the Jews of Ethiopia was completely bypassed in every single Jewish history book, and including our own textbook, said, I need to do a presentation. I matter. And indeed he did. And one of the things we learned from him, and later was confirmed by his parents, was that the Levites used to move, and I think I mentioned this once, from small village to small village. They wandered, as they did during the biblical period. They wandered and taught. And one of the things they taught was the vocalization of music.
There's a common phrase that you have in the Bible is Halevi asher bisharecha, the Levite
Ken,
at your
ken.
gate, like together with the stranger, like
Exactly, because the Levite usually came from elsewhere. But the Levite's job was to teach. And one of the things they taught was how to sing. All right.
Well, I have a question.
Uh-oh.
If you look at the diagram on the screen there, there's one area, a triangular one, right in the middle where all three overlap.
Yeah.
So what happens melodically when you have that?
Oh, you have
You have
Isaac.
like separate shuls and then there's.
No. You know the joke. There are 3 Jews and 4 shuls on an
Okay,
on
right,
a
but
yeah,
what I'm
what?
saying is, I can understand each separate one having a separate melody, but when you get into the middle there, you have 3 different melody
It's a mixture
sources.
of everything.
You have a
Right?
mixture of
No,
everything.
no, just that little triangle in the middle.
Yeah, that's a mixture of
Right
everything.
there?
Yeah, that's the one that
It
has-
says Israel, because we have the ingathering of all
okay.
the
I
exiles.
can't read these from here, okay. I
My
get it.
beloved,
Okay.
get a
I
new
get it.
glass, pair of glasses.
That's
Okay.
what sort of appealed to me about that diagram was the fact that Israel embodies all of it,
Yes.
like everything.
Except apparently the culture of the Beta Yisrael. And that one is painful.
Mhm.
Okay.
had his bar mitzvah at Shalom.
Oh, did he?
I think so, yeah.
They were such a beautiful family, and he was and probably still is, an extraordinary person. So some of these modes will date back shortly post 586. Some of them are post 70 CE. So I'm going to ask Bill and Joan to explain why it's so difficult to transfer the musical information of cantillation, these cantillations, to the stuff that Idelson provides us with, to Western music. So can you start with modes?
So, are people familiar with major and minor? Like that we have scales in Western music, and anybody who took music lessons had to play scales probably. Major scale and minor scale. So that's one of the difficulties, is that for most of us is what we were brought up with. And then we're taught modes, but the modes that we were taught that fit, like our folk music, are mostly in modes. But it's still the Western, or we have Western ears.
And that's it.
And so what happens is, actually this is, I learned more, I'm not going to tell, it's a Roman story, but anyway.
Oh, we'll save that for
eat.
Kiddush. We'll still save that for Kiddush, or something.
So, about 30 years ago, I got really interested in Baroque music and started studying the different tunings that they would use, because the way the piano is tuned, which is referred to as equal temperament, where every note is equal distance to the next note, which we're taught was developed during Bach's time, but actually the Chinese did it 5,000 years before. But anyway,
What the heck?
but it was really interesting to play around with, like, even in a major scale, where do you put the third? Because it gives a different feeling. That could still be in tune. And this we're used to sort of pushing that, but it can give more of a yearning sound. So we know that, and we also know from the instruments themselves. I was playing, some of you know, in a Middle Eastern group, and the first time I started playing with what's the flute called? The
Olas?
The out?
What is it?
Bill?
Out?
The out? Or they were just a regular record?
No, it's a flute. You play it, you hold it to the side. I can't think of the name of it. Anyway.
Not elbows, say. Sorry.
No, that's the double
But
flute.
Okay.
but I was thinking, oh, he plays so out of tune, and then I realized, no, he is playing in the tuning that he's used to. And in fact, one of the really sad things is there is an indigenous tribe in Brazil, up in the mountains of Brazil, when the Catholics came there to force them to convert, they taught them music, and it's pretty incredible. There's some amazing musicians. They also taught them how to make Baroque instruments. And so what happened is they were taught a different tuning system, the Western tuning system, and apparently Brazil is making money off of these people. They're traveling around the world performing, but apparently when they play for themselves, the tuning is so different that it sounds really out of tune to our ears.
Yeah.
And the government is not letting them play their traditional music, and of course it's getting lost. Anyway, it's very sad. But so one of the things that's difficult is we know from, especially wind instruments are typically tuned to play one scale, and it's not necessarily going to sound in tune to our ears. We can't imitate it unless we hear it. If we hear something on a string instrument, we can usually imitate it. But so we don't know exactly, because we don't have those instruments.
But they are being rebuilt by people who are studying this.
But even
so, we
Baroque
don't know
music,
what the
people say,
tuning
well, how
was.
do you know what to do? We had writing, and there were a lot of critics. We know a lot about, like, for instance, what Mozart would have sounded like, because his father wrote a lot and criticized a lot of other performers. So we know what wasn't considered, at least in Mozart's father's mind, good playing. But we don't have that going back, so I don't know.
We don't. And one of the major differences is something that Bill's going to describe, motifs.
Oh. Well, a short course is, it's a huge topic, okay? I'll explain what a motif is. A motif means different things to different cultures. when you're speaking of Western culture, a motif is just a short melody. There's no particular significance to it. But a motif in Jewish music is based on the Masoretes. It's based on the scholarship of the original Masorete scholars in the early, what do you call 0 to 500?
6th to 10th century CE.
Yeah, I know. It's the
Yeah.
5th to 9th and
Sixth.
10th they developed it. But the thing is that the Masoretes did is they interpreted the hand signals and
Yeah.
codified them and developed a system of tamim or signs that guided you as to interpreting the melody that you're supposed to say the words through. The words of the Bible are supposed to be spoken in a musical fashion. They do use the term read, like in English. They use the term read to describe what you do with the Bible. You read it, but you read it in a musical fashion. That's my interpretation of that. But getting back to modes, or it's motifs or modes you want to know about?
She did modes, you do motifs.
Motif is well, in my opinion, a motif is a teamine. Okay,
No, but it's
and there's 33 symbols. What's that? I can't see
It's
it.
the emotional, the motif, the emotional content. Yeah, you told me.
No,
You tell
I'm
us,
trying to coordinate my mind.
Okay,
It's an oral tradition. Okay,
therefore,
and part of what the Masoretes did was codify that oral tradition, try to write it down.
and what did they, what did they link the symbols to? Why specific
Well,
words?
it's linked to the scriptures.
And if something has a certain emotional content,
That's right. It's a musical. It's how to interpret the Bible, how to read the Bible, how to read the words. What emotional or sentiment to give the words, and the symbols give you an indicator as to the vowel and the consonant, and it doesn't tell you how to interpret. It doesn't tell you how to interpret, but it gives you a guide. But you have to go up. See, what I'm getting at is coming out from outside of the tradition. What I see is that I see the oral tradition, and that's what boggles me. That's the reason I feel like a bit handicapped, because that oral tradition is what's driving Edelson, the book, like all the writing and scholarship. We're trying to write down something that is oral, and it varies according to region, it varies according to congregation, and it's theme and variations.
it's also going to vary according to the words it's modifying musically.
Sorry?
It's also going to vary according to the words that are being musically modified by the trope.
Yes, of course.
So if you have something like a word that says, and he crossed the street, a phrase says, and he crossed the street, we're not going to have a heavily emotional trope note over that, are we?
No, of course not. No. It might even be blank or just held.
Right.
You might have it. Anyways. Oh boy. You see, I was ready to talk about modes. Modes are just combinations of motifs. That's all they are.
Okay.
In traditional reading of cantillation. Gee whiz, I'm hesitating. What the hell's wrong with me? You see, the modes are. Good Lord, I had this straight in my head before I got here.
The motifs.
Well, I know. I'm incorporating the motifs. What a mode is a series of motifs.
There you go.
Can I just say, as I understand it, I may be wrong, correct me, but I mean, a mode is just like taking a scale and starting it on a different note. You play
That's
yes.
the Western mode.
That's the Western mode.
But sometimes you can change it, like you can augment a note or change it
Sure.
slightly.
Have you ever heard a blues singer?
That's how you get all the different modes. That's right, just like slight
But I mean,
variations.
as far as like motif, like in Western music, you have to see the term a leitmotif. You know, like
L-E-I-T.
it's got some
Yeah.
short theme that repeats over and over.
Sure,
and
the Merry
it's like-
Widow as opposed to Wagner.
Yeah, and
The
Wagner.
motif in Jewish music means a lot more. It's how you interpret the Bible.
It's
Yeah.
how we feel the words.
Yes, it's adding sentiment and feeling to the words.
Right. So
a
when you
modern way of maybe understanding it is like what Andrew Lloyd Webber does, which is why his shows are so successful, because there are certain intervals, like which is the measurement between two notes, that sound like yearning and that speak to us. And he's a master at knowing how to take those intervals, like a major six, which is like da yum, and we respond to that, and then the harmonies that support that, and that's how we feel emotion. So it's in our ancient music.
the same thing.
Yeah, which is
We respond to that emotion.
The only caveat I say is that the music we're looking at, the ancient music we're looking at, was strictly melodic, and there was no harmonic content, which puts. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to ask that we move to the second of the chiromantic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how much further we've gotten. By the way, this is the work of Sarah Meyerson, who is a Chazanit in a Reformed congregation. You're not going to find someone like her down the street from where Dan and I live at Beit Tikva. Go. This is a little more to it.
Is that the same one as before?
No, that's the second one.
That's her, right?
That's her.
Mercha tipcha munach et nachta. That's the same. Mercha.
Shouldn't be. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Is there supposed to be a difference?
There's supposed to be more to it. There's a third one. Let's try this one. But I have a feeling that looks like the same one again.
Oh, no.
It should say part 3. She does add to it
You're
progressively.
supposed to watch more first.
Yeah, so you're supposed to watch more through. It's okay, leave it.
And there's a lot, there's another one.
I know, but I wanted it to be female.
This is the
Kadma
It's different.
Yeah.
Muna Katon Zakef Gadol Munach Revi'i Darga Tevir Mercha Tevir Kadma Ve'azla Garash Geshaim Ketana Gedola Hazer Munach Zarka Munach Sagol Yitiv Munach Katon Yitiv Katon Mercha Tibcha Sof HaChelek.
Thank you.
And this guy named Guido is the one we're all taught in music education, came up with like the solfege, the do, re, and
And this precedes it by several thousand years.
yeah.
You may also hear occasionally scholars tell you that the oldest form of written notation for music is something called the Ode to Sekulos, which is Greek, 2nd century CE. Well, my grandfather's beard was longer than that. We have a very ancient tradition, and we are in the process of losing it if we don't use it. So I find it intriguing that the first one that I came up with when we were doing the search was a young woman. because this is the direction I think we must go in order to preserve, so women don't walk away.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so I'd like you to find, oh no, I think it's this one. Give it a click. This, I believe, is Syrian chant. Now, I don't know if it's Aleppo or Damascus. I think this is it.
זרקה שופר הולך סגותה חזר גדול תלסה אז לה קריש רביע שופר מהופך קדמה זקף קטון זקף גדול תרגע תביר מעריך טרחה אנח יטיב פסק שלשלת תרקד מן תנגרישים סוף פסוק.
So those are the very same notes.
But heavily influenced by Arabic cultures.
This is where Josh and I first started.
Okay.
Okay? When we say Arabic, we mean Semitic, because we all come from there. So we have been living within this sound basin as an identifiable people using these very identifiable notes a little longer than Islam. So there's no reason to worry about what it sounds like. And in fact, the sound of a muezzin in Jerusalem actually does speak to me as well, because that's another part of our family. This is where we come from.
Nay, that's the name of the flute.
Huh? The nay, you're right. You're right.
Wow. I knew it would come back.
Okay, so now I want to go to something a little bit different right here. But I'm going to tell you a little more before you click. I want you to know that this is the work of a Rabbi Chaim Ovadia. Chaim Ovadia was the rabbi at an Orthodox shul in Bethesda, naturally. And I say naturally because Josh wrote, all right, you have to talk to my rabbi. But what makes Chaim Ovadia so precious to us is that he has opened and started an academy for the preservation of Sephardi culture.
Awesome.
And this is its foundation, the sound of Sephardi culture. Now, what we have here, I hope we have the right one. What does the Shema sound like when we do it? Can someone?
That's the high holidays.
Yeah, let's Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Now,
Now,
that couldn't precede the loss of the ayin.
No, it couldn't.
Because you can't lengthen an ayin, it's a stop letter.
That's right.
Shema.
Shema.
But not all
But we're
ayins
not-
are pronounced that way.
No, well, no, and we're going to make a point with this. Go.
The ones that are transliterated as
נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו ורוח כל בשר תפאר ותרומם זכרך מלכנו תמיד מן
I'm stopping it because it's a whole story here. But that's the Shema you hear if you go to a Moroccan synagogue. Doesn't sound like us, does it?
No.
There's a lot of we don't want to lose
We're
this.
very Ashki-centric.
We are extremely, well, some of you are, but we shouldn't be. Let's try another exercise.
Well,
Anyone?
this is our heritage.
Hey,
Come on.
yours, not mine.
Well, it's my heritage.
It is yours. Now, let's try something else. Would someone be so kind as to sing the first line of Nishmat Kol Chai for me? The way we do it?
Nishmat Kol Chai.
All right, now let's listen to a Moroccan Nishmat Kol Chai. Where is it? Music. Is this it? This? No?
Nope. Yes.
That. Could be. I'm worried that we might have lost it. No, that's the Shema. No. No, we lost it.
But it should
Which
be
is-
before the Shema.
It should be before the Shema. This should be it. But that's what we were. We did that.
But before you leave that, I mean, it's interesting, the mixture of Aramaic and Hebrew in the terminology there is very curious. I mean, some of it is Hebrew, some of it is Aramaic, some of it's mixed.
Just like the Talmud. I mean,
Yeah.
a mixture
Well, no,
of
but
Hebrew
this
and
is
Aramaic.
It gives you an idea how old it is.
Yeah. So suffice to say that the way we do Nishmat Kol Hai is entirely different than the way any one of the Sephardi congregations we had listed with Idelson. It would have sounded like, or a Babylonian chant. Do you recall? No, eh? Look what you did to her. She's lost her heritage. It's your
She's been
fault.
out of luck for too long.
Yeah, sure, blame the city. Okay, so it is an entirely different sound, but again, the same notes, okay? All right, we're going to finally move in towards the end of this, and we've already heard the third version of chiromancy. The work of the Masoretes, as Bill started to tell you, was to create a standard Hebrew without deviation, so that we would all be reading the same thing and understanding the same thing and all be understanding who we are the same way. So the Masoretes, there are theories that the Masoretes were supporters of the Karaites. Everyone here know who the Karaites were? Okay, anyone not?
Dead Sea Scrolls?
No?
I don't.
Thank you. So the Karaites were a fundamentalist sect of Jews living primarily in the area of Damascus and Aleppo, with a few in Tavarias. They were fundamentalists and literalists. They interpreted the word of the Torah literally. So if the Torah or the liturgy refers to Hashem as Rofeh Holim, you don't go to a physician. God's going to heal you. And for the most part, the Karaites have shrunk to a very tiny, tiny, tiny group of people in Israel. Some of you know who Shelley Brown was, Rabbi Brown's wife. So Shelley Brown, when she was studying in Israel, happened to stumble upon probably the only living male Karaite her age, and naturally they went out on a few dates. Because why not, right? With a few dates, because she was so put off by the literalist, fundamentalist. It was Shabbat. You're going to get someone to light for you? No. Wrong. We sit in the dark. Okay. You die. A population dies that way. Women die in childbirth that way. And the population shrinks. We will be seeing that happen south of us pretty soon. The population shrinks. It's sad, Fern. It doesn't need to be. So, the work of the Masoretes, some scholars have argued that the purpose of the Masoretic Nikudot, as well as the Masoretic notes, cantillation notes, was done on behalf of the Karaites. This is doubtful. One of the reasons it's doubtful is that we're looking towards the end of this period, the 10th century, at the very time that Sadia ibn Yosef al-Fayumi, who later became the Gion of Sura in Babel, was operating in the region of Aleppo. Sadia was diametrically opposed to Karaism and literalism, horrified by it and very well aware of the implications of it for a future Jewish population. Furthermore, in terms of cantillation and in terms of the work of the Masoretes, he was deeply put off by the work of one of their clans, the Ben Asher clan, and liked the work of the Ben Naphtali clan. Which one do you think was adopted most by us?
Ben Asher.
Ben Asher.
Yeah.
But some people think he himself was a Karaite.
Yeah.
But there's no proof of that.
No proof of it, no.
No, that is one of the scholarly suppositions about why they were so careful. There's a better reason. Why were we so careful? Why did they preserve the pronunciations that we are familiar with today in Torah? Because we can't read it. They brought together scroll upon scroll upon scroll. Their work was to create pronunciations so that any Jew reading Hebrew would not alter the meaning of the text. Because if you alter the meaning of the text, there are serious implications, not about whether God is your healer and your doctor, but about what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to live.
I just want to make one comment.
Go
It's
ahead.
interesting to read. Like you can download a copy of Ben Asher's work.
Absolutely.
But I mean, what's interesting about it is it's all written in rhyme. Like it's it's like it reminds me. My mother wrote a cookbook in rhyme, but his whole book on it's called Diktuke Hatamim, like about
Okay.
Hebrew grammar and cantillation. But it's all rhymes.
Why don't you, you want to send that and we can
Yeah.
put it up?
Well, it's
It's
difficult to read
fascinating.
because it's in the version that's free is the original Hebrew with German comments. Like it's written, but
Oh,
there
yeah.
is a newer version put out by modern in Israel, but I don't think that's available.
Okay, well, we can pursue that further. The whole point being is that our music would have disappeared without the trope notes that were derived from the very hand symbols. And if you look at the trope notes, they resemble, right? The hand symbols that Fern knows and that this Chazanit was doing. That's how we preserve our knowledge, by using it. And we cannot use it if we can't read it. We cannot use it if we cannot sing it. There is no service. There is no rabbinate. There is no joy. And we disappear. This is how we survive. This is our theory. The music is critical to our souls. So the history of the Masoretes can be found in a number of places. They are fascinating. And for me, I started my master's degree working on Sadya. I adore the works of Sadya, and he has been largely overshadowed by Rambam. Not much you can do about that, but he's worth reading. So we now move back. No, we move forward now, and this is Bill's area entirely. This is the work of a woman named Suzanne Heike Ventura. Do I tell them a little bit about her and then move on to you?
Yeah, give her a little bio.
Little bit. Suzanne Heike Ventura was born, I think, in Switzerland or France.
Switzerland, I think.
Yes, thank you, Dan. Was born in Switzerland with a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father, just prior to World War II. So the
Can you just repeat her name, please?
Sure.
Oh.
Suzanne Heike, Haik, Ventura, Ventoura.
Ventura.
But you know what, Fern? We'll happily forward all this
That's
stuff
your
to you.
CD.
Okay.
Okay?
Oh, okay.
So her family hid in France, or at least she hid in southern France during the war. And when the war was over, she suddenly had a purpose, and she made that purpose her life's work. Over to you. What was her life's work? It is the holy grail of Jewish musicologists.
She was absolutely driven to
Recreate?
yeah. She was absolutely taken aback, inspired by the idea of discovering the music of the Bible, of actually interpreting the signs, and her scholarship for years she combed all the symbols in the Bible and she came up with her own interpretation of the symbols.
She wanted to recreate the music of the Second Temple.
Yes, she wanted to do the original music from long before the Masoretes, and what she found out, her interpretation was that the symbols actually represented scale degrees.
Can you explain that term?
Well, scale degrees, it actually, the symbols actually denoted a scale, a specific scale. In her case, it was the chromatic Dorian. But anyways, that's just detail. Boy, this is so clear a minute ago. No, but
We're having senior moments a lot these days.
No, but what happens is, why her work is controversial, it shouldn't be, because it's her effort to try to interpret the cantillation signs, to put a she really wanted to do this, is a personal project on her part, and she dedicated her life to doing it, and she put so much effort into this. But the trouble is that her theory about the scale degrees doesn't line up with motivic, with the Teamine, with
At all.
with the original symbols. It's almost a repudiation of the traditional interpretation of the cannellation, which is based on the meaning of the words, their individual motifs. And she didn't treat it like motifs. She treated them like scale degrees. Like it was just like literally. If you hear that CD that I circulated around, you'll be surprised how, well, frankly, yeah, I'm gonna say it.
Sure.
How Western.
She was a
her
Western
interpretation
musician.
is.
She was an organist.
Yeah,
primarily.
it's very Western. There's nothing really Semitic Oriental about the sound that she's putting across.
That
And-
makes it
and
rather
that-
suspicious.
That makes it suspicious, and that's where the bulk of the
Well, I mean,
criticism comes from.
You know, the effort is sincere, but I think she's like wishful thinking. You know what I mean? A little bit of wishful thinking. On her
So
part.
let me put a question out to you, if you don't mind. What would drive someone who had survived, what would drive a Jew to try to recreate the music of the Second Temple, having lived through World War II and having heard the reports of what happened in places like Auschwitz and Birkenau? What would drive a Jewish musician to make that their life work?
Fierce determination to pass things on.
That's one. What's another? And remember, this is the music of the Second Temple. That's what she's trying to reconstruct. It's specific. What else would drive her? Yeah.
Well, I can
Reminiscence of destruction and trying to maintain something beyond that.
To maintain something beyond the destruction. That's possible.
What I wanted to add, is there's a saying that like Jewish history tends to repeat itself, like what happened to our ancestors happens now. And if you look in the Psalms, like by the rivers of Babylon, there's that verse, Sham she'elunu shavenu divrei shir. You know, the people who captured that demanded that we play for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this parallel, like in Auschwitz, they forced the Jewish musicians to play while people were being
But she
killed.
wasn't in
No.
Auschwitz.
No, but I mean, okay, but still, I think it's still an interesting parallel between.
Right. Okay. You know, but that goes back to a different question. How shall we play the Lord's song in a strange land? Well, we do it all the time.
Is it to honor?
Ah, that's one word. And this is a guess on all our parts, because she never tells us why. Ever.
What did you say?
To honor. To honor. To honor who?
All the victims.
And that is a possibility.
To what?
Well, she was living in a Christian society, and they presumably, the very first Christians, okay, before they became so totally Hellenized, were familiar with this type of music that she's talking about.
Yes.
And so there was a tradition in scholarship in the 18th, 19th century especially,
To create
to get
congruence.
prestige for Judaism by showing similarities, origins. You know, they used to say you could tell which part of whether it was a Catholic or Protestant part of Germany by the kind of services the Reform synagogues had. You know.
These days, you know. Anyway, and I shouldn't be critical, because a lot of the scholarship is done by people who belong to the Reform movement and aren't hampered halachically, okay, from doing this. I think we should think of one word, and that's tikva. Why do we need to reconstruct the music of the Second Temple after the horrors of the Second World War? For hope. For hope. But that's my theory, and you are all welcome to yours. So,
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Like as far as the Ventura system, like if you look at the cantillation marks, like there's some of them are above the letter.
And some of them below.
And some of them below. So I tried reading her papers, which were rather difficult to follow. But according to her system, it's the ones that are below which correspond to the basic notes of
That's
a
right.
scale.
Yeah,
whereas
right.
the ones that are above are more like embellishments.
Just embellishments, that's right,
motifs,
Yeah,
so-
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Now, when I listen to it, it reminds me of an opera called Aida, if you're familiar with it, which is very French. So, should we just move forward to a taste of Hike Ventura
Yes.
and give her due as someone who found a purpose in life beyond just her daily activities, and someone who may have hoped for more for us. So can we go down to this? Aida. It's spectacular though. Because we're Westerners. There's a drone. We can make this available to anyone, by the way, this is available to anyone who's interested. It's just a matter of sending something.
I just wondered if any of you have seen the miniseries, The House of David. They have David singing in a way quite similar to that El Ghazi Effendi was doing.
Because Al Ghazi Effendi comes from the region, right? This is the old Turkish Empire.
They did a choice, you know.
They made a choice, and an intelligent one.
It's
very similar. There's a famous story about Benjamin Disraeli when someone made an anti-Semitic remark. He was supposed to have said that when your ancestors were savage barbarians, mine were singing in the Temple of Solomon.
Yeah, you forgot the part about savage barbarians running around with blue paint on their faces.
Right. This is the way Disraeli would have liked to imagine the Temple of Solomon.
Now the problem here is that there was actually no need for her to do this.
Yeah, my ancestors.
Yeah, painted blue, Bill, which is, painted blue. She didn't need to do this. And one of the reasons she didn't need to do this was because of the work of the Masoretes, right? So we know that she herself was probably not deeply involved in a Jewish community, or knew nothing of the work of the Masoretes, didn't know what a Mikreot Gedolot was, had probably no experience with that. And we are fortunate enough to live in an era where so much was dug up in the Middle East. So much has been found that links us to the ancestral music. At any rate, I tend to believe that she was hopeful, regardless of what she knew or didn't know. And I think we should be too.
She was isolated, I think.
She was completely isolated from our community. Yeah. All right. So finally, there is one last video, and let's see if you can identify this. And then we have one last thing for you. That speaks to you, doesn't it? You feel it. I do too. That is a Sephardi of Unimopene. You might want to talk to whoever puts our high holidays together. Because we will lose this if we don't use it. So
we were in Philadelphia and went to the Sephardi Mikveh Israel, and they've been meeting continuously since 1700 or something.
1740.
1740. And they used, their trope and everything is very moving. It's the Sephardi, probably, I don't know exactly what.
It would probably be the Sephardi Amsterdam that Joan played for you.
Okay.
Because those were the Jews who came to New York and to the colonies,
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It speaks to us. It moves us. We're almost, it's as if we are hardwired for this.
I want to go there and hear that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We can look it up. I want to ask Joan to play. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they wear the outfits too.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is Amsterdam.
That is so cool. Oh.
They wear the outfits.
They wear the outfits too. In Philadelphia. I like it.
I mean, and the Spartans that come from Holland or Europe or in England, they wear top hats. You know, their outfit is a top hat. And,
Yes.
and they,
That's very 19th century.
That's very 19th. So I'm going to go back to what Joan played for you originally, and let's see if you recognize it. I would like to take a vote here before she starts. How many of you found it beautiful? Because I did. It's magnificent. And I'd like to remind you that our music is entirely different from Western music. Its tradition is oral. We retain it. It is several thousand years old, and Western music cannot contain it, just like Western culture could not contain us. We don't want us to walk away. This is one of the greatest tools of survival and continuity we have. And the sad thing is that there are very few Hebrew schools, probably none. So we were very fortunate to have a band program that focused on Jewish music. But it wasn't.
I'm always appalled that the universities, the arts departments are not broad-minded. I did a music degree at Ottawa U, and you
Nothing Jewish about it.
or improvise.
Mhm.
Improvisation is not respected by Western musicians very much. No, like no offense, Joan. I'm
Oh,
not
I'm not
talking about you.
offended at all. I'm just-
No, I'm not talking about classical
No, I
musicians.
totally.
No, she agrees.
But-
We've
but
had
the-
this
Jazz
conversation.
is very
There-
improvisational.
there's
Jazz.
Yeah, jazz.
That's big. Oh, we have a program for you coming
There's
up in
traditions you have
6 months.
that the Catholic Church and back 1,000 years ago, they codified everything and they screwed everything up.
Well, they also banned notes,
Oh yeah.
which is something we never
Sure.
did.
You know, there's so much to lose this. I'm sorry, Joni Mitchell.
She's not
You
one of
know,
us.
You know, you don't know what you got
Till it's gone. Well, we're not going to lose it. We're going to sustain it in a number of ways. But this is what carries us from century to century, from country to country. And I'd like Joan to play that piece again. And once again, if you know what it is, please wait.
Sorry.
You want to start again?
Doesn't work with the
Okay. Start again.
Hold on.
Okay.
It was sleeping for a few years.
You just have to reboot it.
It's having. That's how you do it?
Apparently.
Okay.
Magic key.
It's an Allen key.
Yeah. Oh, no. IKEA did not make this. Okay, start again.
Sound at all familiar?
Not
Sounds
yet?
familiar, but I can't.
That's a Torah trope we use.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which leads us to where we're going long term with this is, and this is what really caught me when Ayala started talking about how we can find, whether it comes through our DNA or early childhood experiences or whatever, but we can actually trace these tropes in music that is even being written still by Jewish
Today.
composers.
It finds its way in.
And some of it, there are actually pieces where it's exactly the same notes with different rhythms, and so we're investigating that and trying to ask, you know, is this intentional? Is it not intentional? I don't think. When I played with an Arabic group, they kept telling me that everything I played sounded Jewish. But you know, I was just playing what I felt, and it was an improvised group, and I couldn't tell, but they kept saying, "No, you definitely the Jew in the group."
And you should have said, "And aren't you glad?" But the thing is, let's make a very interesting point here. So when we started this, I called my friend Josh in Bethesda, source of so much that is interesting, Berkeley graduate, etc., professional musician, etc. And I said, Josh, I wonder if you could look at the back of the Chumash where they have all the cantillation notes in Western music. You think you could compose something from that? And he said, I'll call you back in 5.
5 minutes.
Josh is very
5
good.
years.
Josh is
years
very
or 5
good.
minutes?
No, he called me back in about 25 minutes, which was okay. I did the dishes, I moved laundry around, and he said, "Yeah, you can. It's stunning." He said, "You can, and it's beautiful." And yes, you just heard how beautiful it
Just
is.
strung it together.
And you heard how beautiful it is here, and how beautiful it is here. So we want to retain that. So the next part 2 is not yet jazz. It's Europe coming to North America, Tin Pan Alley, and the big band movement, big band era. So if you have any Dave Brubeck, start listening. right? But you can leave Stan Getz at home. Are we good with that?
Thank you.
Thank you
No,
for listening. That's you.
That's a huge oyster. First of all, you gotta look at immigration, history of immigration,
Don't worry, I taught it.
Because there's
I
like
taught it. We're
200
good.
years and
We're
all of a
good.
sudden
We're good.
ships are
We're
coming
good.
across,
We're
and
good.
then New York just explodes.
Yeah, Bill, don't worry.
First of all, thank you very much for that explanation and the sneak preview of what's happening, but can we finish with the music at the top, which was?
Let's
the
go back to
beautiful hymn at the
Gilgamesh.
top?
Let's go back to
I think
Gilgamesh.
that would be a nice way to
Actually,
conclude.
let's listen to the rest of Gilgamesh
Yeah.
because that is
And we can stand and stretch at the same time.
at the same time. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Seventh
It's
inning
quite
stretch.
stunning. Thank you, Joan. Thank you,
you.
Bill. And thank you. We get back to work Monday.
This is Sunday, eh?
Yeah.
Monday's not it.
Sunday,
Oh, Monday,
Monday.
no, you got a couple of days off. Wednesday. Gilgamesh.
I love that.
Gilgamesh, oh, you could cry.
This guy's amazing, just amazing.
And I'm happy to forward this to anyone who is interested. Sheva? Did we get the whole thing? No, it's fine. Did we get the whole thing? Yeah, it's been